Thank you, Carol, and welcome to old and new friends alike. Today's Tiny Syringe, we welcome Mel back to the podcast to wrap up our series, talking about the reality of young ladies in society today. Mel, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you so much.
It's been a delight having you. This will be our final episode. So thanks so much for hanging out with us and giving us your perspective. So the final issue that we have scratched around the surface of, but we really just haven't gone into yet, is recognizing and giving yourself permission to see what are those weighty things inside of my life that have substance, have a certain tenor to them. There's a structure to them, and you know in your soul that they form you, that they're a part of what you're called to do on the planet. And it just seems like this would be a great episode to talk to folks your age and to help them to recognize, damn it, you can do that. You should do that. So tell me, do you feel permission, may or may not be the right word for it, but do you feel permission to just focus your energies in your life on those few things that you love and then really drilling into them and getting exceptional in that space?
Absolutely. You saying the word permission to me kind of opened my mind to be just aware of I can do these things that I am called to do and that I've been inclined to do since I was born. And I think, you know, the way that the world is set up, it's to keep people just locked in place or locked in fear. And that's a place I've been my whole life, thinking I am not powerful enough to do this, or I'm not talented enough to do this. And I think that's a big thing in our generation with speaking to girls my age. There's so much fear in even taking a step to do what your purpose is or what you want to do, like what's inside of you, what you've been talking about. And so that was me. I've had this vision in my head since I was a kid of what I want to do, but it seems so distant and out of reach even at 27 that you kind of just let it fade away. And I pulling those gifts back up that we just have shoved down for so long and just putting them back up front and saying, oh my gosh, like I still have this, and it's okay to not be powerful or okay to not be ready, but just acknowledging this is my dream, these are my gifts, it is possible. So I
just want to express that I'm proud of you, you know, to have the intestinal fortitude to recognize, I'm not carrying these things in my backpack anymore, and then just going in a search for that backpack and going out and finding it. You've done that, and a lot of people don't. So what was the trigger for you? What caused you to have that inner confidence that I need to go in search of that sense of destiny, that inner voice, that spark of the divine? We used that term in the first podcast. What caused the change?
Honestly, it was somebody speaking into my life, a dear friend just kind of calling that out. And I think that's so important for people. I mean, even us, if we meet somebody, you recognize gifts and talents in other people way more than you do yourself, because we're such critics of who we are. But it's so easy for us to see this person is so good at this, or this person would be so great at that. And so a good friend just kind of called that out in me, and I had to sit back and look at my life and say, man, my life is pretty chaotic because I've let it become chaotic, and I've just been kind of tossed to and fro and not focused on what I need to be focused on. And so I kind of just sat down and I was like, okay, God, I'm here for a reason. I'm here on purpose. What's the purpose? And just asking that question is so important. Whether or not you believe in a higher power or whatever you believe, asking the question and just like getting that truth out of your body into the world is just so powerful.
So good. That's so good. maybe one of the top 3 things that I began practicing in my 20s, and now I'm still practicing 30 years later, is silence, solitude, and writing. And so I can promise you that for decades now, Mel, I have been in that habit of asking those hard questions.
Yes.
And when you're alone and you're asking them, it feels silly. It feels foreign. Yeah, it feels foreign and silly. It feels like a bit of a masquerade. But when you do what you did, which is you ask it in such a way that you are intentional and you are being completely authentic with you and with the divine, something happens. And I think that humanity has always known that. And if you read the great philosophers, the great theologians of antiquity, you find people that were in love with that space, that strange, strange, strange space where people like you and I can touch the divine. And to hear that you are pressing into that space, especially after the challenge of maybe missing that space and walking into the chaos that you were talking about earlier, and slowly like trudging your way out of that chaos. I mean, good on you, Mel. You are a shining light for a lot of young ladies. Well done.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like this idea as you start your trek is I like recognizing that trekking into unmapped territory is always met with fear. And I do mean always. You and everybody else. And I want you to know that as you take that first guarded step into unknown territory, the fear that is present doesn't have to push you back. And if you'll practice that day in and day out for years and decades, that first step, that second, that third, that fourth step into unmapped territory just gets easier. It truly gets easier. And you're no longer beset by fear as you enter into it. You actually have the thrill of adventure. And I think that there's a thrilling adventure waiting on the other side of these decisions that you're making to map out new territory. Thoughts?
I love that. I think the word adventure is something that every human longs for. I think we were born for it and made for it. And just with fear, my dad always used to say, because I've just always been a fearful person to do anything. And just if you meet fear, you adapt and overcome. And it can't consume you. It can if you let it, but just realizing that if we're open to entering into that quiet space, that uncomfortable space at first,
Yeah.
is the most powerful thing you can do. And asking questions is the second most powerful thing that you can do.
And you said it earlier, which is surrounding yourself with people that have your best in mind and who love you dearly.
Yes, and speaking life into you, that's the most important thing.
That's so great. That's so great. Well, let's end with this thought then, Mel. In the same way that we've been talking over these last several sessions, let me say this to you, and let me say this to all of your counterparts, the young ladies in America who are beset by what the culture is asking of them, beset by the demand that the culture has on having some hot take on every one of a million different topics that are streaming across our news feeds. The young ladies who haven't taken the time to figure out the 2 or 3 or 4 things that they're exceptional at, and they've not done what you are starting to do, which is they've not taken that first or second step into unmapped territory. I want to say you have my permission to walk, to discover, to journal, to write, to delve, to get below the surface of a matter. And you have permission to hang out with people that absolutely adore and love you. And you have permission to be able to put in the hard work of taking the first step and of discovering the exceptional thing that's on the other side of that unmapped border. The world is waiting for you. The world is desperate to have you on the right side of that border. And so we need the next generation to be pursuing the things that are absolutely unique to them, because the world is just going to be a darker place if it doesn't have you. So Mel, I am glad to be on your team.
I am glad to have you on my team.
You're wonderful. Thanks so much for being a part of this. So that is our tiny syringe for today. I welcome your feedback, and here is how you can reach us.